Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich has released his 2010 federal tax return. A PDF of the return can be found at his campaign's website. According to page 1 of the return on line 37, the adjusted gross income for 2010 for the Gingriches was just over $3.1 million. This puts the Gingriches in the top 0.1% of all income earners in America. And from here we can also see that a bulk of the income came from partnerships and S corporations. And when we go to Schedule E, we can see that nearly $2.5 million came from an S corporation called Gingrich Holdings, Inc. Back to page 1, we can see that the Speaker and his spouse reported a combined wage amount of $450,000. And according to the detail, Gingrich Holdings, Inc., which is the same S corporation we saw on Schedule E, also paid the Speaker $250,000 in wages. Also, another related company called Gingrich Productions paid the Speaker's spouse nearly $200,000. Back on page 1, we can also see the amount of dividends and interest that the Speaker earned during the year. They total to almost $50,000. And if we assume a 4% interest dividend yield, then we can assume that the Speaker's underlying investment portfolio is probably valued at around $1.25 million. Continuing down on the return, we can see on line 31 that the Speaker paid nearly $20,000 in alimony to a recipient whose details are blacked out here. Also continuing to page 2, we can see that the total tax for the year was almost $1 million. And when we divide this $1 million in total tax by the $3.1 million in income, we arrive at an effective tax rate of 31%. Continuing to Schedule A, we can see that the Speaker had, or at least the Speaker reported, no mortgage interest paid. So the assumption here is that the Speaker owns his residence outright and that he has no mortgage debt. Continuing down, we can see that the Speaker and his spouse made $81,000 in charitable contributions, which is approximately 2.5% of their income. And in the detail, we can see that the recipients included the Basilica, miscellaneous, and also we can see that a majority of the contributions actually came from his S corporation. Okay, continuing with the return, there are a few more interesting facts here. First, on Schedule E, we can see that the Speaker, it appears, owns an additional residence that at least they didn't live in during the year, which was rented out for a very modest sum. Also, later in the return, we can see that the Speaker and his spouse were not subject to AMT. Their federal tax here was actually higher than the AMT tax, and therefore the AMT did not apply. Also, we can see that the Speaker employed at least one household employee who was paid almost $15,000 for the year. So that's the return, and as I mentioned before, this can be found at his campaign's website.